He is the co-host of the Take Line podcast and the host of the weekly YouTube series All Caps NBA. We have the pleasure in welcoming Jason Concepcion onto Hoopsology. How's it going, Jason?
It's going well. How are y'all?
Doing really well. We've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. Appreciate you taking time off your busy schedule to chop it up with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
With a lot of our guests, we like to kind of delve into what made him a basketball fan in the first place. So just want to ask you, starting off right off the bat, what is like your first basketball memory or favorite basketball memory, whatever comes to mind?
My first basketball memory. I think it might have been just like playing basketball. There was like a hoop sort of in the neighborhood that was like dunkable, not by me, but by people that I knew. It was like probably 8.5 or something, like at a park. And so that was incredible. Like watching people actually dunk in front of you it was amazing. And then, I'm from New York and I became a Knicks fan mostly because I had an English teacher that I really didn't like, and he was a Celtics fan. So I'm just like, I'm going to like a team that he hates. And that was that, we got shortly after that, my brother and I got like a rim for the driveway that we would lower and just play like on the lowest height ever. And just everything is all dunks. And that was it. That was like the gateway drug for me.
So let's talk about the Knicks, since that is your favorite team. And I just want to ask you, since you are from New York, and I think you have just a general sense of the team more than just like Mad Nice, as you just lived in kind of the Rocky Mountain-esque region of the country.
Yeah.
Can you kind of give us the sense of when that video happened, when Bing Bong, just the sense
Bing
of
Bong.
like, yeah, just like the sense of Knicks fans. Like, I feel like it's just like, to me, I'm a Bulls fan, but at the same time, there's a part of me that kind of wants to see the Knicks just go to the finals just to see how their fans are going to react. I'm just keeping it real.
I mean, the thing you got to understand is that energy has been there the whole time, even when they were terrible. Like, and it's not like they're world beaters now. They're a decent team. As we are recording this, they are down 4 to the Pacers early second quarter. But people have always been energized for the team. I saw many like really bad Knicks game in the Garden in like the dregs of like late Isaiah Thomas era, early Mike D'Antoni era, when they just like absolutely sucked, winning 20-something games, and people were going crazy. Like people went crazy for it. The Knicks just have like a deep, the type of fan base where, and this is not the case everywhere in every market, but it's like, it's like legacy fandom. You've got people whose like grandfather rooted for the team, whose grandfather's like, oh yeah, I was there when they won the title, that kind of stuff. So the team has like been passed down. So there's like, there's 8.5, whatever it is, million people in the New York metropolitan area. So there's just a lot of fans, and they're always crazy. Even when the team sucked, like the games were sold out. So, and then you've got this entire generation, probably 2 generations, honestly, of fans that have grown up in this like post 2000s Dolan era, where it's just been really bad for 2 decades, like the worst record, of any NBA team over the last 20 years. And that generation is just like ready for anything good. It's like Jeremy Lin, that was like a ray of sunshine for a second there. The Mela team that won 53 games, that was like a break in the clouds, even though everybody understood at the time, like, Jason Kidd is 40. Pablo Prigioni is 39. Like, Rasheed Wallace is on the team. This is not like a team that's built to last. So the fact that there is, a decent squad with young players on it, and a front office that appears to have a plan, and a good coach, this is really fantastic. So like my sense is that Knicks fans are just like psyched. They've been waiting for this. They've been waiting for a team that's not a trash fire, and they have it.
Yeah, there does seem to be kind of like still this like rabid element of that fan base that I don't think you would see in other fan bases. And is that largely due to like the importance of basketball in New York overall, or what do you think has kind of sustained that fire?
I think part of it is that basketball is obviously a huge part of the kind of like cultural fabric of New York, but I think it's also that people love their sports in New York City, and for most of the Knicks, history, there's only been the Knicks. Like every other sport in New York, there's multiple teams. There's the Jets and the Giants, right? There's the Mets and the Yankees. Previously, the Giants also and the Brooklyn Dodgers. So you had like a ton of teams over there. There's the New York Red Bulls and the New York FC. There's the Rangers and the Islanders, but there was only the Knicks. That was it. So like that was the team that united the entire city. When the Knicks were good, it was like all the different fan bases united behind the Knicks. So that's part of it, is like this kind of like cultural memory of like how fun the city is when the Knicks are good. And now, of course, there are the Nets. But it's different. It's a lot like here in LA, where it's like the Lakers have this deep rooted fan base, with multi generations of fans, going back decades. And then the Clippers have their fans, and they are, very energized, but it's like a smaller subset. And that's kind of like what it is, with the Nets versus the Knicks. The Knicks just have years and years and years and years and years of fandom and history and people that were brought up, to be Knicks fans.
Yeah, it seems like most of the people we have talked to have some kind of connection to New Jersey and New York, kind of agree that the Nets being in Brooklyn is sort of like the new kid coming to school, I guess, like the new kid that comes to your high school. And, the first week or so, everyone's just kind of trying to see what's going on with them or something. I don't know if that's a good analogy, but do you have a sense of like any sort of internal struggle in the city, or just kind of like
I
the
mean,
Knicks
it's
dominate
not
the
really a
history?
struggle. And this is not to like lord it over the Nets fans. The
Sure.
Nets have their New Jersey era fans that have stuck with the team. There's that is a segment of the fan base. And then they have like I know a lot of people who just kind of live around the Barclays and started going because the tickets were super cheap, and they had like good food in the arena, and there's a Shake Shack across the street,
Hmm.
and so you could just go and hang out, and it's a good game. And they have a lot of fans like that, where it's like, oh, I either just moved to New York City and hey, this team is good and I'm close by, or the tickets were cheap, what have you. And they have like a lot of kind of newer fans or free agent fans who kind of were looking for a team to root for, and just happen to get a team that has, Kevin Durant and Kyrie whenever he decides to get vaccinated. It's similar here in LA in the sense that, the Lakers have a wide swath of fans, like construction workers and cops and movie executives and, all that kind of thing. And then the Clippers have, it's mostly transplants. Like all the Clippers fans that I know are people who moved to LA to be like TV writers. Like it actually, like that is their fan base is like comedians and TV writers. People who moved here and were like, I like basketball. I'd like to root for a team. The Clippers are here. I'm priced out of the Lakers tickets. Therefore, I'm a Clippers fan.
So, Jason, with the Clippers getting a new arena, what do you think that dynamic's going to be like? Do you think ticket prices are going to go up and kind of like exclude those fans that are looking for like a cheaper price, or do you think they'll keep it fan friendly? Like, because I was worried about that with Golden State when they moved to the new arena,
Yeah.
and this tickets are expensive there. So,
Yeah, I would imagine that you'll see it go up a little bit, but also they just needed to do it. Like it's hard to really grasp like what a like what a behind enemy lines type life Clippers fans live. Like the entire city is against them. The people that work their games, like the ushers and shit, are all Lakers fans. Like when the Clippers lose in their building with their fucking banners and their colors, when they switch over their colors, the ushers are mocking them or like laughing at them. The people who are working at the arena working the game are not even fans of them. So it's just like they need to do it. They need their own house with their own banners and their own, colors and their own pictures and stuff that they can leave up. They don't need to take down all the time, because it's just like an untenable situation for them. It's really a terrible situation for them. Like there was a clip. There's a clip from one of the Game 7 like chokes where you could the ushers are laughing, and it's a home game for the Clippers. So it needed to change. That is like a terrible situation for them.
It definitely sounds like. Jason, shifting gears to kind of what's happening now in the league these days. One of the hot topics is the NBA rules changes. It seems like general consensus is this is good for the league. What's your opinion on this? Do you see kind of any negatives in terms of what you're seeing so far? Or overall, do you think this is a win for the league in terms of how you watch the game on a daily basis?
I think it's a negative in the sense that, maybe we might get more fights or near fights, as the Jokic Markieff thing showed us, and the Miles versus Rudy kind of like dance off showed us. But I think it was necessary. There was just too much contortionism, especially in the way that, particularly that players would draw fouls. So I think it's overall been good, and I've really been interested to watch, the kind of overall response, fan response, anecdotally from what I'm seeing is like by and large happiness, and also like a weird Schadenfreude, like it's like revenge of the refs. You know what I mean? Like you can sense that the refs love not calling the foul that James Harden would have drawn at any other point in his career. And you can sense also that fans love seeing him not get it.
Yeah. I literally, kid you not, I saw a clip the other night. I wish I could remember what game it was from, where a ref turns to the sideline and gives like the crying motion. Yes. And that's exactly what I tweeted, was revenge of the refs.
You can, there is a sense that they love this, like you can kind of sense their pleasure. And it was fun over the first kind of opening of the season to watch, Trey struggle with it and Harden struggle with it, but those guys are too good to they'll figure it out.
Yeah, from what I've heard from at least a large portion of the fan base, it does seem like they have been, I guess, kind of hungering for like more physical contact down low, more post play. That's been a narrative since the Warriors blew up, really. Do you think these rules have kind of helped to bring us closer to that, given that the scores are like a little closer to 100 points a game, like plus or minus 10 points now?
Yeah, it's hard to know if that is, any of the advanced stat guys will tell you scoring in the early part of the season is usually not where it ends up towards the end of the season, middle of the season. So it's hard to say, but just anecdotally watching it, it feels like they're letting a lot more contact go. It feels like there's a level of intensity because of that. And I think that is, borne out by, again, these kind of like early season kind of scraps that we've seen that harken back to, the days when the Knicks, my Knicks were actually in the finals and stuff like that kind of thing. Now, I will say that having cut my teeth on that era of basketball, that's like how I fell in love with basketball. It's like the Knicks teams that like just would hit you in the head with a forearm
Anthony Mason
to the basket. Like that, it's actually, yes, it was intense, and yes, it was exciting. It wasn't actually as cool like as people make it out to be now. Like it, 89 to 88 in the Eastern Conference Finals year after year is really rough. Like, you just want to be like, somebody make a fucking basket. And like, guys getting suspended or injured and like not playing is not as it's not that great. I'd prefer to see players on the court. Hopefully now, I think with the way it is now, with the kind of like free flowing movement on the perimeter, kind of still in force, but just these very specific kinds of moves have been taken out of it. I think that's a happy medium, and they could even dial it up a little bit more with the physical contact. But I like where it is now. But I doubt we ever go back to the kind of like no holds barred WWE, AEW, like grab somebody around the neck, horse collar style basketball that was really enforced throughout the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, nor do I think we want to completely go back to the 90s era, because, like, to your point, also like floor spacing things and stuff from that era,
terrible.
Not as pretty to watch at times, as fun as some of those games were. Do you think with the the Jokic incident, there's scuffles that Rudy Gobert got into?
Yeah.
Does that another kind of narrative, true or false, a narrative that has been spewed is that players don't care during the regular season, all this stuff? Do you think things like this, these highly intense moments, give the perception of like players caring more during the regular season?
Oh, sure. I mean, listen, it's interesting. Like the Jokic, the Jokic Markieff thing is interesting because on the one hand, everybody was like hand wringing, like, "Oh my god, this is terrible," and you can't hit somebody with their back turned, but don't turn your back. Also, like, what are you doing? Oh my, like,
Yeah.
we don't do this. There's no place for this. Markieff could have been hurt, but he wasn't hit that. Like all that stuff. At the same time, we're all going to be watching like November 29th when that game, like, that's circled on the calendar for everybody. Everybody can't wait. Like, so I think that is a little bit more physical intensity. If that helps build rivalries that carry over into the regular season, all the better. Like, that's great. Like, when's the last time we got excited for a late November game between, an Eastern and a Western Conference team? I can't remember it. So that aren't even like finals, like rivals,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, so I think that it can't but help, as long as the kind of like physicality doesn't get out of control, which it doesn't. I don't think it has. I think it'll help.
Jason, I want to kind of pick your brain in terms of this whole Ben Simmons saga. I'm sure you've talked about it ad nauseum, but when is kind of the end game on this in terms of us not having to deal with this mess like in March or April?
I mean, like the end game. I mean, the thing to do, honestly, is to just like not pay attention to it until like something happens, because we're at a stage now where it's like both sides just leak shit. Like you'll get a story will pop up, from Shams, that it's clearly like seeded by Clutch, and another story will pop up somewhere else that it's clearly like Daryl Morey said this, like, Daryl, the Sixers want Jaylen Brown in any Ben Simmons. That's clearly like Daryl just being like, let everybody know I'm still on top of this and I want a player back. Because we're just in a stalemate right now. And I think that, both sides have handled this extremely poorly. And, we're just at a stage now where it's like the last kind of like back and forth was Ben saying he's experiencing like mental health issues, anxiety, etc., generated from this and kind of like the events that led to this, while the Sixers are essentially saying, although there's no one like on the record quoted as saying, like, basically, we don't believe you. We want to talk to your doctors, or go see our doctors so we can confirm that is the case. And it's like, that's just like an ugly place to be. So, just get back to us when something happens. As for the end game, I think, wow, I think my sense is that eventually Daryl will lower the price. right? I mean, like
Makes
how much
sense.
more? Like he's on the record as saying, "Oh, this could last 4 years." Come on, this is not going to
Yeah.
fucking last 4 years. Stop
I,
it. This won't last 4 years. And so the only thing I think I can see, assuming that Ben can can continue to eat the fines, which I think are rescinded now that he has said that it's a health issue that he's out with. But like assuming the fines go back on and assuming that he can sustain those, I would assume that it's just the Sixers lower the price, because I don't know how you can. I just don't see a world in which you can expect to actually get a star player back at this stage with Ben not playing and nobody seeing what he can play like, and it's just like a war of attrition. So I don't know where you go from here.
So who do you think, I guess, suffers the long-term consequences of this? Once, I'm sure Ben will get traded eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, and certainly Philly's had not only handling this situation, but other situations with their front office. They have not looked good in recent years. I guess, who do you think, I guess, is going to suffer the long-term ramifications of this? Because I have a feeling this might affect Ben Simmons for the rest of his career, just due to his game and just due to, I guess, the overall negative feeling of him as like a superstar player that I don't think
Yeah.
exists now, just due
Yeah,
to
I
what
don't
happened in the
know.
playoffs. So
There's been a lot of. It's probably Ben. It's probably Ben. He's the one that has to kind of like live with the way the Sixers season ended last season, with him famously passing up the dunk late in the game and not scoring all of, I want to say, 4 points over the second halves, late in that series against the Hawks. Not to mention him, referencing his mental health as part of the reason that he can't go into practice, for that is still an issue that has a lot of stigma around it. To say nothing of the fact that like there is a vocal slice of the sports fandom population that it thinks he's faking it, which I, obviously no one knows. That
Right.
said, I think it's very reasonable to surmise that Ben Simmons is telling the truth. Listen, if I failed at the highest level in a very public way, to the point where people were like burning my jersey and like booing me at wrestling matches when I'm not even there, and my coach and my co-star player has thrown me under the bus, and they clearly want to trade me, and Sixers fans are yelling stuff at me on the street, I think that would be extremely stressful. Like I'd be stressed out. So I think it's fair to assume that he's telling the truth, but I think that it's probably Ben, because unless he can get back on the court and show that he is a impact player in the NBA, this is the thing that will stick with him. This is kind of like the theme of his career. And he's just like it's like just like a really weird and interesting player. You know what I mean? Like, obviously he's got there's a lot of upside to him. He's an incredible defensive player. He's a great passer. He's like just ruthless in the open court. At the same time, it's like everybody in the whole entire world knows what his weakness is. You could go like to the Amazon jungle and find an uncontacted indigenous tribe, and they're just like stand 5 feet away from Ben Simmons and make him shoot. Like everybody knows it,
Yeah.
and that makes him extremely exploitable, to say nothing of the free throw thing, which is like theoretically worse, because like you can't be afraid to get fouled. That just makes it untenable, to the point where like you can't, like, you touch the ball for a half a second and then just like hot potato it away. You have to at least be unafraid to go to the line, as which is what we saw with Giannis, like in his run to the championship last year, is like, obviously very shaky at the line over the course of the playoffs, but never afraid to go there. And so does Ben ever get there to where he's like, you know what, maybe I shoot 45% at the line, but I don't give a shit. I'll continue to play aggressively. Do we get there? I don't know. and we won't know until we see him, and it's going to take a while of him being that player before we forget about all of this.
Yeah, and I think being in the modern era, I think has really hurt because expectations were so through the roof. Like if he's a kid coming up in Australia in the '90s,
Yeah.
makes his way over, like a Luke Longley, like relatively unknown on the worldwide stage, we might be thinking there might be a different narrative on him, certainly, but expectations were through the roof when he started.
And he was good for most of that time.
Yeah.
Like, he was really, really good. Never forget that last stretch when Joel was out, and he carried the team. He was very good.
It's true.
Hopefully he can get back there. That would be great.
Definitely. Well, I think the three of us would, and many others would agree, it's been a very successful start to the NBA season. There are a lot of factors in that. I mean, given the rules change, given more fans around, certainly helps. What would be your biggest surprise early on? I mean, there are so many to choose from. You got the Cavs, you got the Wizards, you got the Warriors. To an extent, have been a very, very big surprise, I think. What stands out to you, positive or negative, that has been a big surprise team?
I would say, the Cavs, the emergence of Mobley.
Yeah,
he is like amazing to watch.
Yeah.
He does like 5-6 things over the course of a game where it just looks like he's been playing a long time.
Yeah.
Whether it's knowing exactly what pass to make, when he catches it, when he catches it at the nail, knowing exactly how to get to the spot that he wants to go to, his ability to handle at his size and play defense at his size, and it's like he's just freaking good. So that is, and he's obviously like completely changed the trajectory of the Cavs. They have some nice players also, and Jared Allen continues to emerge, but it's been Mobley that has made them, turn them all of a sudden into a team to really watch out for. That was the team, everybody understood that the East got better, that Knicks got better, that the Hawks. I guess that'd be the other thing is the Hawks, the shakiness of the Hawks. They're at 9-5, or 5-9, I want to say right now. And so what's the deal there? They have all of their players, right? Some new players. But mostly it's that for the most part, they're all kind of healthy. They had a lot of decisions in terms of lineups and personnel made for them last season with the injuries. And now, you have Collins with a new contract, you have Trey with a new contract, and you have guys ready to prove themselves. Plus, you've got the league that understands that this is a good team and they're treating them differently. And will they adjust? I think, they have the talent to adjust, but we need to see it happen. So that's been one of the surprises. I thought that they would come out hot out of the gate. And it obviously hasn't been the case. And then, gosh, is it really? I thought a lot of people had Golden State as that dark horse finals team, always predicated on, can Clay be 50%? Can he even be 50%? If he's 50% and he can give Steph that break where, when Steph sits, all of a sudden the offense doesn't fall off a fucking cliff. Okay, let's think about the Warriors in the finals. They've been a lot better than that. And Clay is nowhere, is not nowhere to be seen yet. So what happens when he shows up? They've been
scary,
super impressive. And then I guess, it's just kind of like connected to a team that recently beat the Warriors. The LaMelo Ball being just exploding into a superstar. I will admit, I had my doubts about LaMelo, mostly because of the path. It's hard to what can you trust about Lithuania's stats? What can you trust about the stats in the Australian Pro League? But he's been unbelievable. And you want to talk about buyer's remorse? I wonder if the Warriors are damn, if we had taken LaMelo instead of Wiseman, what would we be right now? It would be actually terrifying. So, the emergence of LaMelo, it continues to surprise. He is just so fun to watch.
He is. Jason, I have one more question for you. You brought up
Sure.
AEW and WWE, so I can't resist since I'm a huge wrestling fan as well. Did you happen to catch Full Gear at all? And what's your opinions of just like AEW rising with the new acquisitions, Brian Danielson, Punk? How you feeling these days with this kind of new,
I
Wednesday
didn't
Night War?
I didn't catch it, but I will say I think that we needed an AEW, right?
Yeah,
There just needed to be something else, a competitor, a reasonable and real competitor to the WWE for a variety of reasons. Quality of product, the quality of life for the athletes and the performers that are in this life. I think we just needed it. I think it's great because honestly, you can read any number of stories or watch any number of interviews about how really tough it is to have a career in professional wrestling and surely like have a
yeah,
career when the WWE was kind of like the only game in town. So the fact that there is now an alternative and that it is a really entertaining alternative and one that I think, by everything I've read thus far, is a little better for the people that are performing in it. I think that that's great. I think it's good.
yeah. I agree with you. Having another competitor raises, WWE's stock as well in terms of
Yeah.
presenting a better product because they become complacent ever since 2001. So
Yeah.
it's nice to have like another competitor pushing them. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic is every single week. One promotion responding to the other.
I
They're
agree.
one upping with each other every
I
week.
agree.
So looking forward to that. Jason, appreciate the chat. Can you please let our audience know where they can find you on social
Sure.
media and then all your shows and anything else you're working on as well?
Sure. At Network on Twitter at NETW3RK. I'm on, and you can go on there and go on my bio, and then it's got all my other social tags in the bio. I host the podcast Take Line, which I co-host with two-time WNBA champion Renee Montgomery. That comes out every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. I host the pop culture, comic books, sci-fi, fantasy podcast X-Ray Vision. That comes out every Wednesday. Find it wherever you get your podcasts. I host the sports comedy web show All Caps NBA that comes out every Friday on the Take Line YouTube channel. And gosh, what else? Watch Primo when it premieres on IMDb TV in 2022 or whenever that comes out.
Appreciate it, Jason. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.